All right, you're watching AM Live here on NTV with me, Ibrahim Karanja, on this Thursday, the 14th day of September 2023, on a day that President William Ruto starts afresh a new year in office after attaining 1 year in office yesterday. He was sworn in on the 13th of September 2022, and we keep looking at his performance on the different fronts, be it on the economy, be it politically, and now we are looking at Ruto's scorecard, security and human rights, and the rule of law. But before we get into the topic, like I said, our panelists are already here. Peter Kiama, Dr. Michael Ndonya, as well as Julie Wanjera. We also have Charles Owino joining us by way of virtually. He shall be commenting on these particular stories that we have. But let me get your view very briefly, because we have already commented about what is happening with the economy. But then again, the Daily Nation again on the top deck talks about the expected fuel shortage because of the price stabilization, that the government had put in place just the other day. So apparently there is a debt of about 1.8 billion shillings since the government announced the price stabilization, which they were very clear to say is not a fuel subsidy. But already independent oil dealers are crying, and they're saying now they'll not provide fuel. What does it speak of us, Kiama?
I think what we are seeing is an attempt by government to try and provide solutions to some of the challenges. And I think that's a good thing in terms of the government being proactive in trying to address the challenges that face our economy. So on that score, I would, I would commend them for being proactive. I think the challenge we are having is a sense in which you are finding sort of quick fixes. I don't think the economy has quick fixes. I think what you need to see is a long game in terms of, excuse me, fixing our economy. We've seen the issue of, taking oil on credit to pay later in terms of the dollars, to deal with the issue of the dollars. But what we are seeing being reported is that this is more complex than, just, a basic decision on taking on credit and paying later. Because now we are seeing that the idea was to reduce the pressure on the Kenya shilling. But I think it has worsened. By the time they were making the decision, I think the shilling to the dollar was about, I think slightly below 140, around 130. It's now going to 150. And so that particular intervention seems not to have worked. Just looking at the headline news and the analysis done by economists in the last few months, the dollar keeps on going up.
All right. Yeah. Kema, hold it there, because we now have Charles Owino on board. And Charles, good morning. Thank you very much for making time for AM Live this morning. And the story on all the local dailies this morning is on the proposed new taxes that the government or Treasury is having. And this they have, it's what we've seen in Treasury's medium-term revenue strategy, 2023-2024 to 2026-2027. Just to give you a highlight of it, is that we may also see an increase of the VAT paid in the country from 16% to 18%. This at a time when some quarters within the population are saying the things are bad. There is a shrinking economy and a shrinking wallet, while the government says, look, take the short-term pain because there is a long-term gain. What is your brief take on this?
Thank you, Ibrahim. I think the most important thing is, as a nation, we have to undertake patriotism. We have to be patriotic, and we must ask ourselves a lot of questions.
Charles, sorry to cut you short. We can't see you clearly. We can't see your face.
You can't see me clearly?
Yeah, we can't see your face.
I wish you could.
Yes, now it's better. Now there it is.
Now it's better?
Yes, it's better.
It's okay. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I'm saying that the most important thing is this is our country, and we must practice patriotism as a nation. And it is important to introspect and ask ourselves a lot of questions. Number one, where did the rain start beating us? This economy, how did it come to where it is today? And what is the alternative? Just as they say, there is no gain without pain. What is most important is, are we going to achieve in the long term? Where were we? Where did the current government take this economy? Where did they find this economy? Was it in a position that it was doing well, or it was in a position that it was not doing well? So when we are talking about taxation, most importantly, we need to look at the implications. Yes, the taxation is high. Nobody would want to be taxed highly. But where are we moving to? Are the government is now 1 year since, and this is the first budget that the government has put into place. I would say that we need to be patient as a nation. Let's give the government at least another 1 year. Look at how we are going to perform, and ask ourselves, are we in a position to achieve our objectives? Remember, this government took on very high debts, and these debts must be paid, and we have a number of challenges. So my take is that I would give government at least a year to see how the economy behaves. Issues of foreign exchange and other matters, there are a number of other factors that need to be in place. We need to industrialize, as I heard one of us say. We need to look at other alternative measures of raising revenue. But you cannot do it in a day. It will take time. And what is most important is, let's look at how the government is going to perform in the next 1 year. That is my take.
Waswahili wanasema ngoja ngoja huumiza matumbo. Tutakuwa tumeumia matumbo as we wait.
Ndio, but we have said that you've seen what government has done. Number one, you know, we had a lot of problems with things like unga, very high cost of unga. You know, in the last season, government managed to get us fertilizers at about 3,500 from 7,000. This year, we are getting fertilizers at 2,500. Where I come from in Siaya and in Ugenya, we are doing our second season. Our last season, which we harvested in July, was very good. The cost of unga generally in my area has come down. So I think as government puts in more measures, like reducing the inputs in agriculture and so on, I think we are going to do better. So hatuwezi sema ngoja ngoja itaumiza matumbo. There will be no gain without pain. Even this my big weight, if I want to reduce it, I just have to work hard. And it will be very painful. It won't be easy. All
right, Charles, thank you very much. And I think at this point we get to our topic of conversation, even as Charles adjusts his camera. We've been seeing your chin. It will be amazing to see your face.
Pole sana. Pole sana.
Yeah,
I'm standing actually.
Oh, you'll get tired. This is no,
I won't get tired. Anyway. I've been a policeman for many years. I'm used to standing.
Anyway, we get into the topic of conversation, and today we are discussing President William Ruto's scorecard, 1 year in office, security and human rights, and respect to the rule of law. And I'll start with you, Julie. According to, because you are the co-founder, Mathare Social Justice Center, your assessment of 1 year of President William Ruto in office as far as security and human rights is concerned?
If we give it on a scale of 1 to 10, I would say 4 if I'm being generous, but 3 in most cases, because we've gone into a dive in terms of human rights, in terms of security as a whole, because security is not just security of the person. There's food security, there's water security, there's all this security to feel safe and secure and able to live in dignity. During the Mano period, and the fact that actually about 8 counties came out to have this anti-government protest speaks volumes about Ruto's scorecard in the 1 year that he's been in office. We've had a lot of human rights violations.
8 counties would then again, you'd argue that some other 39 counties did not come out.
Yeah,
so
but in
that
the
could
history,
as well speak of...
in the history of our country, we have not seen 8 counties come out in large numbers the way they did to protest government, and not mobilized by human rights organizations, just communities just coming out and saying, we do not support, this is not what you promised, and we are here to ascertain our sovereignty and say no to this. The other area is in the area of human rights. When the president got into office, he acknowledged that extrajudicial killings were happening. And we at the civil society and grassroots organizations were very happy about that, because we had been used to the normalization of that. And we were hoping that now that it has come to the president's attention, we are going to have some relief in this. We are going to see some changes. But unfortunately, we have seen quite the opposite. Extrajudicial killings continue. The conduct of the police has been very, very bad in terms of how they treat the citizens, tear gassing children. I'm sure we've seen such videos. And just being very, very inhuman to the protesters. And for our society to advance, we have to listen to dissenting voices. So that has been very problematic. And even just the shrinking space of the civil society, we've seen that the government has given the NGOs a bottom-up approach, which I do not really understand. And then us at Mathare Social Justice Center, we received a letter from the government as well, telling us to stop doing human rights in Mathare community, to stop protecting the fundamental
Wait a
human
minute, you
rights.
received?
A letter.
From who?
From the DCC. And she asked us that we need to stop protecting the fundamental human rights of Mathare residents because it's not in line with the new CBO Act, which is insane.
We may need to see that letter because, again,
I have the letter. You
have the letter with us. You will show me when we get to Kiama to talk about this, so that we comment on something that we are sure about.
Sure.
And Kiama, later on today, you're doing a press conference on the status of human rights in the country. You will provide insights, analysis, and key findings on the current human rights situation and the prevalence of torture during the past 1 year. Where are we? Are we where the previous regime left us? Have we improved in terms of respect to the rule of law and human rights, or have we taken a nosedive?
Let me start first of all by, they say in English that give credit where it is due. I think it's fair that we recognize the measures taken by this government in the last 12 months with regard to security and human rights. I think we need to commend the current government for being very decisive on the violence in the North Rift. Because that has been, I remember working there in the early 90s, and I have never seen, you know, that high level of concentration of guns in civilian hands, you know, openly and, you know, with the knowledge of government. So the fact that the government has been very consistent on this for more than 10 months, you know, in that operation and engaging the communities to change, I think that's important because we need peace, safety and security in the North Rift. The other point I would like to make is that the president, as Julie has said, publicly acknowledged the systemic nature of, you know, police abuse of power. Again, that is a plus because we haven't seen a president who has acknowledged that. So the other point is that we saw the disbandment of the Special Services Unit that was allegedly involved in extrajudicial executions and enforced disappearances. So that again is a plus. We've also seen the current government pledged to you know, put in place the Office of the National Coroner Service to ensure that we have an independent death investigation system.
That is the National Coroner Service Act.
Exactly. That was passed in 2017 but has not yet been implemented.
Yeah, sure.
I think we've seen some movement administratively in terms of preparing the human rights instruments to facilitate the appointment of the National Coroner General. We've also seen the deployment of a senior pathologist within the Attorney General's office with regard to you know, beginning that process of setting up the National Coroner Service. So some of those measures are important. We've also seen the government make a decision to towards giving budget independence to the Inspector General and the National Police Service by the appointment of a principal administrative secretary to manage police, to be the accounting officer for police finances. That again is a plus. But I think, sorry.
Please proceed.
Yes. So I think the good story stops there.
Then you start.
In terms of high-sounding promises, policy pronouncements. But in the last 12 months, we have been, let me say, from 2013, the last 10 years, the Independent Medical Legal Unit has been monitoring police conduct, places of detention, every day, on a daily basis since 2013. And we did so deliberately so that we understand what is eating us as a country with regard to security and safety. And what have we found? We found that the last 12 months have been the worst for this country.
Those are such strong sentiments.
That the number of human rights violations, the number of extrajudicial executions, the number of cases of torture and dehumanizing treatment and punishment by state agencies, especially the National Police Service, has doubled in the last 12 months as compared to the previous 12 months, 2021, 2022.
And at that point, allow me to, because we have before we get to Ndonye, we have a person who has had the advantage of being in service and also outside service as an observer. Charles, Julie and Kiama are saying, in fact, Kiama is saying the last 1 year has become worse, and the level of extrajudicial killing has actually doubled. From a person who's been in the inside of the police service and now outside and independently viewing, what would you say is the status of our country as far as security, human rights, and respect to the rule of law is concerned?
Thank you so much. I think Kiama has been in it long enough. Maybe he has the statistics on what he's talking about. I may not have the statistics, but one of the most important gains that we got as a nation was the introduction of the Bill of Rights in our Constitution that has given us a lot of leeway in open discussions and actions. And that is why we got a civilian oversight authority to look into some of these matters. And I think that puts us in a better position because we have a civilian oversight authority that would look into some of these complaints. The only area where I saw there was a lot of challenge is when we had demonstrations across the country where some lives were lost. That is specifically where I can be sure and I can talk about. But most importantly, I would want to say that when we are discussing issues to do with civil disobedience and so on and so forth, it's important for all of us to act within the Constitution. Many a times you find us talking about the right to demonstrate, to picket, and to assemble without insisting that it must be peaceful and it must be, the demonstrators must not be armed, so that we make it easy for the police to manage some of these situations. But when it comes to the so-called extrajudicial killings, number one, the head of state was very clear that he's not going to entertain extrajudicial killings. He's not going to entertain abuse of human rights. That is a plus because it's a good pronouncement from the head of state. Now, what remains is institutions, human rights observers, and so on, should ensure that every case is handled within its merit. I've always said, even before, that the police institution is an institution where individuals take personal responsibilities. The police service does not take collective responsibility of an individual rogue officer. And I think that this should be monitored very closely. And in cases where we may have cases of individual police officers executing or killing individuals, then those cases must be followed. And we must see this from records. I think next time it is important for us to have IPOA in this discussion. I don't know that they are in, so that members of IPOA can clearly give us statistics of how many cases have been reported to them. Otherwise, at the point where I sit now, I may not know the number of cases which have been involved. But I think we have moved as a country in the right direction. We are able to discuss our issues openly. And we have had cases where individual police officers have been jailed in court for this kind of actions. So I think we are in the right direction as a nation. I'm happy Kiama has noticed that actions in the Northeast have been taken seriously, and there's an improvement. Something has been done. So I think we are doing better, and I expect us to do much better.
Ndonye, your quick observation on where we are as far as this front is concerned.
Yeah, thank you. I want to just agree with the panelists. First of all, I cannot say that we are worse off. So far it is 1 year. In terms of security, in terms of human rights violation, if you look at the 3 bouts of government, anti-government protests that we had, they 3 or 4. And I know that is where Mr. Kiama is coming from. Maybe in his statistics, you are likely to find that the concentration of such cases that he has talked about actually are concentrated within that particular time. That means if there were no anti-government protests, maybe the statistics would have changed. And for us to do justice to the government is young, just 1 year. For us to do justice to the people, we need to see exactly where the extrajudicial killings and those other human violations were concentrated in. Because if it is during the time of anti-government protests, were they necessary in the first place? Because we needed to ask. Was it the
protests or the killings?
The protests in the first place. Because why is it that yesterday people were not killed? Why is it that this week there has been no deaths? It means there is something with these protests. It is our right to protest, but at the same time we need to ask, is that right protecting life, or it is exposing more lives to danger? And at the same time, like Owino has said, we need to look at things from the balanced perspective. That I don't know whether in those cases that are usually recorded, the police are there. I usually wonder, are police human beings? Do we have records of how many policemen were killed during that time by the citizens? Do we have a justice system for them? Because unless we look at this thing from all corners, then we will be looking at social justice as a linear thing, whereas it is a multi-sectoral aspect, where both the mwananchi, both the government and the police and the players also, the partners, are supposed to come together and say, this is really the cause of the matter. Before we blame the government so much, if we need justice on their side also, we need to consider the environment on which they operate and the environment that exposes them actually to fight themselves and to fight their actors like the police, exposing themselves all in the acts of human rights violation. So I think the scorecard, it is too early, especially on the issue of security, it is too early. We cannot say we are better than or we are worse than before. In this country, I can tell you, we have seen things. And we can only judge comprehensively by the end of the term of the Ruto regime.
By the end of Ruto's regime. Julie, you ranked this at 3 to 4, this 30 to 40%. What exactly is it that has made you give them this particular rating? Because when President William Ruto came in, as you have all rightly said, he started by disbanding the special service units, and he said that that was affecting police killings, and even we saw that being taken by the internal affairs unit of the police investigating those particular officers. He has gone ahead to say that he will not, in his regime, direct the police on what to do. He will, respect the rule of law. But you are giving them 30 to 40% rating. What informs this rating?
It is one thing to say something. It is another thing to implement it and breathe life to it. That has been the problem. Our president is very good at telling us what is right, speaking in terms of the rule of law. But when we come to the ground and implementation, that is where we see a lot of the problem. My rating is informed at the status of education. Remember, we are looking at human rights holistically, not just in the scope of extrajudicial executions. Education-wise, we can see that state opposes amendments, health bill amendments. we can see that higher education has become even more expensive than it has ever been in the history of the country. Parents are grappling with taking their students to school. We can see the state of health in Kenya. Doctors are striking soon. I saw that they gave a notice about that. So looking at these very vital sectors of our society and seeing how they're faring is how we measure how our government is doing. Also in relation to the report that we did at Mathare Social Justice Center, citing 20 deaths in Mathare. And I'd like to maybe disagree a little bit on saying that we need to see what caused these killings. Our government is not supposed to kill its own people under whatever circumstances, especially when they come out to say, listen, we do not like how this is going. We don't expect to be met with bullets or tear gas, because also children were very affected by that. We expect to have a conversation like one big family that is concerned about taking this forward and improving our state. So there's no, we are all stakeholders in building the nation. And we expect there to be more synergy and understanding and even tolerance, because all we want is dignity. All we ask for is dignity, and the government owes us that. And we elected the government on that basis, that our lives are going to get better.
All right. And Kema, while you were making your comments, you said that we are worse than where we were. I allowed at that time to comment because that was a hot comment. And you have statistics. Because we would want to base this on statistics. And I like how Julie is taking this conversation from beyond only extrajudicial killings to talking about security of the person, food security and all other human rights that are guaranteed in the Constitution. Can we make our viewer understand why then this should worry them or should concern them?
Why Kenyans should be very worried and be very vigilant, going by the last 12 months, is that the government has performed very dismally on its promise to reform the security sector, what we call security governance and protection of human rights. That was one of the items in the manifesto of this particular government during the campaigns, and even policy pronouncements after. What we have seen that in the period October 2021 to September 2022. We had recorded 232 cases of human rights violations by security agencies.
How many cases?
232. In the period October 1st to 31st of August, October 1st, 2022 to 31st of August, 2023, we have recorded an unprecedented number of 482. Violations, an increment of 250. So the number of violations, mainly by the police at more than 90%, has increased, has doubled in just that particular period, in the midst of pledges to change the manner of policing. So we have never recorded that high number of cases in the last 10 years, of 482. Out of those cases, you find that 128 were deaths from police action. What we call extrajudicial killings, and also deaths in custody, in police stations, or people arrested by police and dying in police hands. Again, that number for 12 months is the highest ever recorded in the last 10 years. That's why I'm saying that Kenyans must be worried. The number of cases of torture and dehumanizing treatment and punishment by security agencies has increased. In the last 12 months, we recorded 351 cases of torture and inhuman degrading treatment. So basically what we are saying is this government promised to end police abuse of power, use of excessive force. Something to note, because the common narrative across the country, which is not informed by data, but can be very well informed by experiences of our youth between the ages of 15 to 35, who are majority of the victims, is that actually police killings have not reduced. Police violations of people, abuse of people has not reduced. you know, it has increased. And therefore, if you ask me to rate this government on that particular pledge of ending police abuse, then it's a minus.
It's a minus.
Because the numbers have gone up.
The numbers have gone
The numbers
up.
have doubled.
And at that point, I want to bring in Charles Owino, because Charles is at the airport, and we keep having him and losing him. That's why anytime we get him, I have to take advantage of that stability of the network. And Charles, you stated that the country is headed the right direction as far as human rights is concerned. But I want to challenge you, because we've seen a couple of things. One, we have seen what appear like abduction, daylight abduction of persons from the streets of Nairobi. We have had statements by the president just recently, which may appear to be sort of extrajudicial. Mambo ni matatu. You either leave the country, we go to heaven, or you know, or go to jail. That is the president. There is also what we saw, Charles, during the demonstrations when leaders were being arrested and presented to court beyond the required time of presentation to court. We also saw what you may call detention without trial for a couple of days of some people, including the most popular in that case was Raila Odinga's bodyguard, who we had been abducted and was never arrested and was never presented to any court of law. So when all these are happening, and the comment that the country is headed the right direction, then one may wonder, what exactly are you basing your ratings on? Charles, please unmute your microphone. You have muted your microphone. We cannot hear you.
Yes.
Yes. Now we can hear you.
I'm in a place you cannot hear me well. I wish I was seated properly with you there. I think a number of a number of good things have happened, but we are also seeing a lot of impunity across the country and a lot of conflict. I think what is most important is, as we preach against the police, we also need to advise our communities to be, at least try to be more civil, and we avoid conflict with the police. The police are human, and it is important that we avoid conflict. Cases of abductions, I would not know whether to call them abductions or call them arrests or on whatever it is, but I know the few cases where people have been arrested is either you are taken to court within 24 hours, or the authority of the court is sought to ensure that you are detained for a longer period of time. So I still maintain my stance that the government has done fairly so well, and we should make sure we make use of the goodwill. And also it is important to understand that our country has more democratic space. That is why you find a lot of these reportings. And I encourage people to keep on reporting cases and actions to be taken against those who violate human rights. The government is just in place for 1 year. The government has just made their changes for police bosses, and I think they'll be rated. And the head of state will make a decision whether the people he has put to drive the security of the country and the police are doing it on the right way. If he finds imbalance, then he may be forced later to create changes where necessary to ensure that we keep on improving on the democratic space of our country. So I would like to request my brother Kiama that we need a lot of civil education, both as much as we train and improve on the standards of the police. We also need a lot of civil education into the rule of law, with the police and with government where necessary. So let us not just put a lot of effort in the police, but we need also to put a lot of effort in the public to ensure that we manage our affairs well and we respect the rule of law as required. An obedient nation is very important.
Ndonyi, you're a communications expert, and in all this, even as the civil societies are crying that the rule of law is not being respected by this particular government, there is a government that keeps saying that all is well. In fact, you've had what top government officials spoke about the alleged extrajudicial killings throughout the demonstrations, and painting a picture that all is well. The international community believes that all is well. as a communications expert, where then are we supposed to strike a balance as a government, in that there are people here who are concerned about disrespect of the rule of law, the fact that their rights are being violated? Then there is an image that the government has to maintain.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I want to say this. We need to be optimistic of the government in this case, in this way. There are things that we have already listed, and I heard Mr. Kiama list them, the good things that the government has done towards improving security, and also trying to improve issues of human right, against human right violations and that kind of a thing. From the communications that the government has made, one of the things is there has never been a president who has ever come out, and he said it, to call out, especially and speak against extrajudicial killings. We had our president doing that, and in another thing we can see we have a space. Remember what Owino has said, that we should thank the current democratic space that we have. The fact that we can even sit here and talk and present our case to the nation, the fact that we can have some space to go and carry out some studies or collect some statistics that can inform us, that is our work, because the issue of security, the issue of social justice, the issue of human rights violation is an issue of every one of us. And that is why we are supposed to be active, all of us, whether it is the police, whether it is the agencies and the partners in human rights advocates or defenders. All of us, we have a stake. And it is good to hear that Mr. Kiama will be giving a press briefing this afternoon.
This morning, actually.
This morning, because through that kind of communication, we are making the government aware of what is happening. The kind of civil education that Mr. Owino is talking about, that is part of civil education that we are supposed to take our people through. Because for us to have a comprehensive framework to be able to reduce cases of insecurity, cases of human rights violations, all of us are supposed to be involved. And therefore, that part of communication, that it is not only solely the work of the government, it is not solely the work of the police, it is also the duty of the common citizen, of the communities, to be able to be concerned, to raise issues or be proactive. Owino has said something, that the people should be told, should be taught, that you should not confront police. You should not push police to an extent that they use extra power. Yes, we know they have the power of the gun, and therefore they are not supposed to use it to the extent that it is not allowed by the law. But on the other side, we are supposed to see that the people know that these people are armed, they are human beings. We should not push them to an extent that they violate the human rights. Then we start talking about statistics. Because if we avoid being part of the statistics, we are going to reduce the human rights violations in this country.
We need to take a break. Jack So will direct me on when exactly to take a break. But Julie, civil societies have time and again done pressers like the one Kiama will be doing in a few. Most of these pressers have been to give us statistics and at times call out government. Many would say we are talking about a situation that we need to approach as a country and have a collective solution with. You know, we need to talk to each other and not talk to each other and not talk at each other. So what kind of partnerships then do you think you can have with government from Mathare Social Justice Network, your organization? Because there is a problem. You are acknowledging that there is a problem, but we need to find a solution. We need to make sure that the next time there are demonstrations, the police do not see the people as an enemy, and the people do not see the police as an enemy.
I think the first thing the government needs to do is bring back the Kazi kwa Vijana Mtaani project. There's a portrayal of the youth being rowdy and maybe causing the government to react. But during this time, there was so much peace in our communities. There was so much, there was an element of dignity, people living with dignity and respecting each other and respecting even police. There were no cases of extrajudicial executions for all that period that the youths were involved in Kazi kwa Vijana Mtaani, because they would get their pay every Saturday, they'd be able to buy their food, they'd be able to eat. So all of these problems are manifestations of poverty, are manifestations of lack. And the government needs to address that lack off. Instead of sending police to protesters. Why do they come out to protest? Remember, in the first place, it was the high cost of living that sent Kenyans to the street. So to address all of these issues, the government needs to meet the people at their point of need, which is, can we provide these youths with atakamani, that kazi kwa vijana? The other day, the president said that the deputy president said that there will be no jobs for the youths, even if they are graduates. And that was very worrying, after saying that this is a government of shareholders. So that side also needs to acknowledge that this is a country for all of us, and it's going to need all of us to work, because that has not been very clear to us. We are feeling like, oh, so we are in a country of shareholders. Oh, so we are not, you know, we need to feel like this is our country together. And sentiments
by these top government officials are some things we'll come to discuss after this particular break. But at this point, 27 minutes past 7 a.m., we take our second break on AM Live. When we come back, statements such as Mambo ni Matatu, as well as the possible solutions, because Kiama will be giving us a press conference later. But what is the solution to all this? We will be talking about that in a few.
Throughout high school, I had migraines and I would have a stimuli. Year 2000, I had surgery to have a child. And then now from there, now I know that my life changed. Because when I woke up from now the surgery, could move my body.
What is daily life like?
All my muscles ache. It's everywhere and it is there every day. It does not go away.
Pain is alive, and so it will follow your temperament. If you're angry, it will increase. If you're happy, to reduce. One has to learn how to manage themselves. I tell people medications like an aid, like a walking stick, but some people want to use it forever, and they lean on it more, and that's when we get problems of dependence or addiction.
It's Butta's birthday month, and you can enjoy free shopping of up to 500 bob. Offer starts at 2,499 only. Visit your nearest Butta store today.
Playing video games at a professional level takes a lot of skill, a lot of practice, a lot of discipline, just like any other sport. It's not an easy journey, especially when you have a lot of eyes on you and you're coming in as a minority in the space. Here in Kenya, I'd like to think I'm well loved, but feeling all that love in South Africa, it feels like, yo.
The crowd is into it. I think we're over. It's over. The crowd is into it. Great block. Oh, this one is over. Yeah.
When you're finally released from pain, that moment when you start to get back to ordinary, and ordinary feels amazing. Whatever pain you're going through, release starts here.
They danced, they dined, they networked. The Luya community in the US.
Indeed, it's been very, very successful.
Find out why this come together was important.
It's time that we're able to tap into the diaspora.
This was a magical event.
Also, on Daring Abroad this week.
The country is ready for investment.
Our experience in 9 states in the US as we begin Daring Abroad investment forums. And on our back home segment,
the government has tried to make most of the processes virtual.
How to register children born abroad as Kenyan citizens.
It's Butta's birthday month and you can enjoy free shopping of up to 500 bob. Offer starts at 2,499 only. Visit your nearest Butta store today. It's Butta's birthday month and you can enjoy free shopping of up to 500 bob. Offer starts at 2,499 only. Visit your nearest Butta store today.
This conversation has been on even when we took the break, and Peter Kiama was responding to what Charles Owino was saying. We still have in the panel Peter Kiama, the Executive Director, IMLU. We also have Dr. Michael Ndonye, a political communications expert. We as well have Julie Wanjera, the co-founder, Mathare Social Justice Center, and Charles Owino, former police spokesperson, who is joining us virtually from the airport here. And you were reacting, Kiama, to Owino's sentiments on the situation under which we have found ourselves, talking about extrajudicial killings, or talking about police brutality, or disrespect to human rights, or disrespect to the rule of law.
I think there will be at a point. There will be a point at which I'll challenge Michael to also challenge us around, because what I'm finding is that what we are saying doesn't seem to be common knowledge in terms of the level, the depth of violation, the spread of violations. We are looking at the last 12 months covering 38 counties out of 47 in terms of our limited capacity to be able to document violations. And we're also saying it's not only the police. We are just saying that the police are the major perpetrators at over 90%. We have seen an increment within that period of violations against children between below 18 years. In schools, we are seeing increases in violence against students and pupils in schools. We are seeing more deaths in custody. You see, and so it's not that we are out there to fight the police. The police are our key stakeholders in terms of improving our safety and security. They are very key to us, and therefore we consider them as one of the key stakeholders. Now, so apart from these cases spreading out over 38 counties and counting, we also see the circumstances. The 128 people who have died in custody or in prison or mainly in police hands, even within what people call the maandamano, we have monitored 20 maandamanos or protests across the country in the last 12 months. Now, out of the non-opposition-led maandamano, especially from January, we have seen maandamano happening in Wajir twice over shortage of water. And the police killed one person because they were protesting against shortage of water. And then the following day, the community in Wajir town again demonstrated against the police execution of their own. The police shot another person the following day. Now, that's not opposition. That's not, opposition maandamano. We have seen maandamano of police harassment of boda operators in Kishi and somebody dying in that maandamano. That's not opposition-led
There
maandamano.
was one also in Chuka,
So,
I remember.
almost in every maandamano we have seen, any protest where the people come out to express and exercise their freedom of assembly, association, expression, even freedom of media, we have seen police use excessive force, violence, firearms in very disproportionate ways. And let's take an example of what we saw in Nyalenda, for example, in July 19th, 20th, and 21st this year. What did we see? Most of the injuries there and most of the deaths there did not occur in the context of people who were demonstrating or destroying property. The police went into people's houses, knocked doors, went in looking for men, and especially young men, and brutalizing them. We have cases, and we'll be speaking to this at the press conference, where police officers pulled young people out with their mothers crying for help, asking the police to spare them. Those young men were in the house. They were not throwing stones out there. They were not destroying property out there. They were not stealing out there. If the purpose was to arrest in order to facilitate a criminal investigation, then why did you bludgeon 2 young men to death in Nyalenda? From pulling them from one house, putting them on the street in the estate, using blunt force trauma on their head. They end up in ICU and die in ICU. If it was the purpose was to investigate their involvement in whatever suspected crime, why did you kill them? Why did we see in Morongo? And that's another issue that we are seeing, where police went into Morongo. This unit, I don't know what it is, in Men in Black, went into the streets of Morongo, and at the end of the day, 6 people lay dead. 6 young people lay dead. Quite most of them shot on the head. That's what we're talking about, the circumstances. So when you put the burden on citizens to obey the law and use it as an excuse for police executions, then I think we are getting it wrong.
We are getting it wrong, and Owino agrees that there are points at which we are getting it wrong, and he says we need to have a holistic approach to it. And Owino, perhaps a suggestion on this holistic approach, a suggestion on how then we need to avoid, so that by next year we're not here speaking about, I'm told Owino dropped out of the conversation. We're still trying to get him. But let me come to you, Ndonye. You are you are with Owino in saying, let's look at how this particular deaths happened. It was during Maandamano. Cases have been given of Maandamanos that are not for the opposition, in which again people were killed. And in no circumstance, be it the opposition-led Maandamano or any other Maandamano, should people lose lives in the country, we need to find a solution. We need to find the civil societies and the government working together to ensure that people can actually practice their rights and enjoy their rights as enshrined in the Constitution. What would you expect of them, the civil societies?
Okay, thank you. I know the issue of human rights violation, the issue of insecurity, especially when it comes to anything that goes beyond the rights of a human being to life, is very emotional. And one of the things we need to understand about the civil society is to be very careful. Civil society needs to be very careful because in this country we have had a kind of a leaning of civil society being a capture, especially of the opposition. And that is why...
Do you agree, briefly, do you agree civil society is a capture of the opposition?
And I will explain.
No, I don't.
All right.
Yeah, sure.
Your reasons?
And this is the thing. Because I'm not a speaker of the government in the first place, but from my observation, I can say civil society has been under a capture ideologically of the opposition. Because in most cases, we do not blame the cause, because for every action that happens, we need to dig deeper. If we have to look for the future, like you are saying, what can we do to make sure there are no such violations in the future? We look at the causes. They are different. Some of them, they can solely be blamed on the police, like what he has said. He has listed cases where we cannot say it was an opposition thing. It was arranged by the opposition. But in some other cases, you realize they are still, for example, the 4 bouts we have had of opposition-led Maandamano, you realize around 30 people whom we know, 30 were killed. And like Julie said at one particular time in this conversation, that if there should be no justification of the circumstances under which a citizen dies, because we have the right to live. Every one of us has the right to live. It's also important for us to map out some of the things that lead people into such traps. Some of the political situations that lead our people into the traps of death, and that is why I'm saying the civil society, if they need to, they have to be apolitical purely, so that we have a very clear conversation even with the government. Can they also try to map out and detach themselves from the politics of the opposition, so that now we discuss of them as neutral, we discuss them as giving us information on behalf of the mwananchi, but not on behalf of a political interest. That way, we will have a conversation that is a bit neutral, and they will have secluded themselves from the political interest, so that when we are defending the government or when we are defending the people, we know where we are standing.
Julie, you want to strike this while it's hot. I wanted to bring in a question, but I think you want to strike this and respond to it while it's still hot.
I don't think we can divorce ourselves from politics in our space as people working within the communities. The civil society is on the side of the people at all times.
Not on the side of the opposition, as Ndonye suggests.
Not on the side of the opposition per se. And I think it is we cannot be non-governmental, we cannot be apolitical, we cannot be neutral per se, as Ndonye is proposing. We will call out when it is wrong. We will upload, as Kiama has said, during the war in the West, as he has said. But we have to be very at the center of it, because that is our work. Yeah.
That is your work. Kiama,
yes.
She says that you are pro-people, but come to think of what Ndonye is saying, most of the times the messaging that comes from civil societies is sort of aligned with the message that is coming from the opposition. And I may understand why, the three of us may understand why, but there is a common man out there who actually believes that the opposition and the civil societies are in bed. Perhaps you may want to clarify this, because most of the times, and Ndonye has rightly put it, it appears like you're pushing the agenda of the opposition. So when you're talking about deaths, it's the same message will be done again by the other side of the political divide.
Let me say this, that I think we need to have a sitting with my brother around this. Maybe it's a communication issue, and I respect the position he has taken, but I would like to disagree with that in the following sentences. Number one, that there is nothing wrong being in the opposition. There's nothing criminal being in the opposition. It is part of our democratic, architecture in the constitution. That there will be those in power, there are those in the opposition, and they have clear roles in the opposition in the constitution. So there's nothing criminal, and I think there's a growing trend in this country, especially in the last 12 months, to criminalize opposition. A clear trend, and that's very dangerous to this country, because we were there in the 90s. And we know where that ended. That ended in Nyao House torture chambers. That ended in detention without trial. We know where that goes. And so that narrative is very dangerous. That being in the opposition is criminal, is wrong, you're not supposed to be. It is a constitutional right to differ with government policies. It is a constitutional right to defend government policy and to side with government policy. So the constitution we gave to ourselves in 2010 protects all of us. So that is my first point. The second point is there's nothing wrong in civil society, seeing the opposition as stakeholders to carry the agenda of the people in parliament. There's nothing wrong. Actually, if you look at the last 10 years, some of the most progressive legislation in this country was taken through parliament through as private members' bills. The Prevention of Torture Act, civil society worked with the opposition then. You know, the National Coroner Service Act that government had abandoned. The civil society and the people of this country depended on their brothers and sisters in the opposition in parliament to push this agenda. You know, so there's nothing wrong with aligning with the opposition as a key stakeholder to push the people's agenda and to defend the constitution. However, what I'm presenting here is not because of opposition. It is because the people of this country are really hurt that they have lost 128 people in the first year of this government through the hands of police, Kenya Wildlife Service, Kenya Forest Service, Kenya Prison Service. Number two, let me say this because I think it's important. Beyond the numbers, we have seen a very dangerous trend. The police killed more than 40 people in 7 days of July. More than 40 people across the country. Now, we've never seen, that is unprecedented. The last time we saw that was January, February 2008 during the violence. All right? And the police were indicted by various commissions of inquiry around that. We are back to where we were in 2008. If you look at the numbers, in a very short period of about 7 days, more than 40 people, actually 45 and counting, were killed by the police in very questionable circumstances. Now, let me say this. Allow me to say this.
Very briefly.
That what is now worrying is that in the midst of these violations, the government, from the president, the deputy president, the inspector general of police, the Ministry of Interior, have commended the police for a job well done. When you have over 482 people violated by this particular government. Number two, there's a clear directive for the police to disobey the law with regard to their duty to report to IPOA. They're supposed to report to IPOA according to the National Police Service Act on every death, every injury out of police action. They have refused to do that. Number two, the police have refused to record statements and issue OB numbers and P3 forms to all the people injured in police action in the last, especially in July, in those 7 days in July. Now, when we have gone to police stations, and what we've been told is there are orders from above not to acknowledge that violations happened.
And all that.
So that's quite dangerous for the country, that the government does not want to acknowledge on paper that they have actually violated us, you know, in the last 12 months.
And we need to find a solution. And Ndonya, let me quickly get this from you. Yes, you're saying things are all right, but when you hear sentiments such as what the president said recently, and because Kiama has said leaders have been commending actions of a violation of human rights, the president recently said mambo ni matatu. We haven't commented on it, and this was in regards to, he said, war on cartels or corruption, and mbinguni hama nchi ama wende jela, and that was hours after a businessman had been taken from the streets and bundled into a vehicle. This is Janswant Rai. Then there are those sentiments of commending the police officers. Where does this then, what does this communicate of us as a country when there is a rule of law, but then again we are having this, what people would call extrajudicial statements made by government officials?
Yeah, thank you. First, I want to comment my colleagues for first agreeing that the aligning of opposition and the civil society is there, and that is their undoing. And I think they will never be stable. They have lost their belt of truth because of aligning themselves with the politics. Not actually the opposition, but the politics of opposition.
But Kema has given reasons for that. That's why they've been able to pass some very progressive legislations in Parliament through private members' bills.
But now the consequences that comes is now the instability. Now, to come to your question on that, I think that was a bad communication, and I will explain why. That is why it is eating the government. This government has had very poor messaging, especially on some issues. For the president to say the three things, I don't think he was advised well, or maybe it came impromptu, or it was something out of his heart, and it is going to eat them. It is likely to bring a lot of issues, especially when it came at the wrong timing, as you are saying. Someone has been abducted, someone, and in line with that person also, the president makes pronunciations that seemed to align with that abduction. And I think everyone in this country has a right to own property. Everyone in this country has a right to go to court, because if a person feels that they need to present their case, or there is a disagreement on the issues of commerce and that kind of, there are laws in this country. So you cannot just, as a president, yes, but you cannot just direct on the 3 actions that can be taken, and make sure you, while actually ignoring the rule of law that exists. So I think it was a bad communication. And I think in future, this government should find a way of telling Kenyans why that was not the position of the head of state.
We only have 2 minutes left. Julie?
Let me also comment on that. The statements, ya mambo ni matatu, is very concerning, because it shows abuse of office by the president to insinuate that he is capable of taking a Kenyan life, someone's life. It also shows the state capture, because the judiciary then loses its relevance if the president is able to say either watoe hiyo kesi kotini.
He actually directed watoe kesi.
Yeah, watoe kesi kotini. So it's very concerning for us Kenyans to see our president, who's just 1 year into office, does not uphold the rule of law, does not uphold the constitution. Does he want to overthrow the constitution already? Because the constitution has all these guidelines on how we should approach these cases. And the fact that he was saying it to a crowd of Kenyans was even more concerning, because it shows just lack of respect for or accountability for anything, because he's president. And that is a cause for concern for us all.
Kiama, mambo ni matatu statement.
Mambo ni matatu. Na haya mambo matatu, la kwanza, heshimu katiba. La pili, fuata sheria. Ya tatu, tekeleza maamuzi ya mahakama. Respect the constitution, obey the law, and implement court decisions. And that is the undoing of this government, just like the previous one. We have seen, court orders issued. And the government has proceeded to go against the court order.
For example, though, yesterday I was with Senator Hilary Sigei. He said no order has been disrespected.
Oh, I'll tell you, there was an order issued in October last year in a court in Nakuru for the government to operationalize the county policing authorities, which is the platform for enhancing public police partnerships. They have not implemented. Number two, there was the IPRA implementation of the VAT against a court order. They began implementing against a court order, remember? And the CEO was cited for contempt. Remember that particular issue?
The case is still ongoing?
Yeah, it's still ongoing, yes. But the implementation was done when the order was in place.
Well, they said that they received the order.
They can say whatever they want to say.
Order it aggressively. They had not. They had not served.
But let me say this
briefly.
Yes, let me say this, that we encourage Kenyans to stand strong. These are difficult times with regard to security and human rights. And allow me to give our toll-free number, because this is where Kenyans get to call us for free. You can call this a toll-free number if you have any case, even if it's a police officer who has been violated, by a fellow police officer or by their commanders. This is the number to call. For any case of human rights violations, please call this toll-free number.
Because actually the other question was
across the country, we will reach you where you are. You don't have to come to Nairobi. We can get you wherever you are.
All right. Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, panelists. That's how our time again has flown past. So we need to bring to a close M Live this morning, the Thursday, 14th day of September 2023. It has been a very interesting conversation with our panelists here. Thank you very much, Peter Kiama Executive Director, Independent Medical Legal Unit. We'll be attending your press conference to hear how you're assessing this government in 1 year. You have given us a tip of how exactly it is. Dr. Michael Ndonye, political communications expert, also lecturer of journalism at Kabarak University. I also have Julie Wanjira, co-founder Mathare Social Justice Network. And we had virtually Charles Owino, former police spokesperson. Unfortunately, we lost him too early. It would have been interesting to hear his comment about Mambo ni Matatu. He tells me it is a quote from the Bible. So, and at 56 minutes past the hour, we close. I've seen Winnie Lubembe walk in studio. That means Your World is up next. Thank you very much for watching. On the other end, there has been Jackson Blackjack, the director here, and a host of others, people within the NTV newsroom. My name is Ibrahim Karanja. Enjoy the rest of your viewing.